Good morning, I'm Samantha Simmons and welcome to our first programme of 2026 with a big year ahead for London's politics. Joining me for the whole programme today are Seema Malhotra, the Labour MP for Feltham and Heston, who is also a Foreign Office Minister, and Andrew Rosindell, the Conservative MP for Romford, who is also a shadow Foreign Office Minister. Welcome to you both. Great to have you on the programme. So let's start with the cost of living. That was the focus of the Prime Minister this week when he spoke at the first meeting of his cabinet this year. He told ministers that the government would be relentless in keeping down costs, promising change that people can feel. What does that mean for Londoners? We've been speaking to people near London Bridge.
When you get paid, you just pay the bills and there's nothing left over. Yeah, so it's been difficult.
I'm a nurse, and so obviously salaries haven't really changed and everything's going up.
Food shops, extortionate. Just everything really, and like now living sort of paycheck to paycheck really, so whereas before there was always something over.
The cost of living is a bit so high right now, especially with electricity and house bills, especially living in London as well. So it's a bit expensive for Londoners, like young people such as myself.
Taxes is the main thing. We are paying at least 40 to 50% to the taxes. That's the thing where the money is going, and the rent is going, but taxes is so high.
We can see the cost of living a huge issue for most Londoners. The Prime Minister says this is his priority. What difference can Londoners hope to see over the next few months, do you think?
Well, the cost of living crisis is a huge issue and it is a critical focus for the government. And I think what is going to be different this year is that people are going to see that we're starting to turn a corner. And it's in this respect that from April, we're going to see the national minimum wage rising again for the second time. People will see, and I want Londoners to feel, that wages are rising faster than prices. We're also going to see the impact of the changes coming in from April on removing the two-child limit on child benefit, which will benefit, I think, over 6,000 children in Havering and also over 4,000 children in my constituency of Feltham and Heston. Look, putting money in people's pockets has got to be really critical, but it isn't just that. It's also about recognising that when you put money in people's pockets, you're supporting them to be able to shop in local shops, put money into the local economy, and have people start to feel that things are going to be better for themselves and their families.
Specifically putting money in people's pockets, the Prime Minister says, he keeps talking about this £150 off energy bills that people are going to feel. That's about £13.50 a month. I mean, that's just 3 coffees or so, isn't it? A couple of pints. Are people really going to feel the difference to the pound in their pocket?
But look at the collective impact. I think that's what's really important. Absolutely, it's really important that we see those millions of Londoners that are going to benefit from the £150 cut in energy bills. But also you're going to see more childcare place support. You're going to see free breakfast clubs being rolled out, 75 in London, increasing by hundreds from April. Collectively, the impact is that people are going to see the costs that they're facing coming down and also going to see their income going up. That's really, really important.
Andrew, what's your view? It sounds like lots of real policies helping real people.
Well, I wish it was all true. I'm afraid that
it is all true, Andrew.
The economy is in a very, very bad state. The state is too big, the taxes are too high, the bureaucracy is overwhelming. People are not being encouraged to work. They're being encouraged to go on benefits. So Seema's very kindly saying 6,000 people will benefit, families will benefit in Havering. But
sorry,
you're taking money
will be coming out of poverty.
But Seema, all of this is actually what the Labour government's doing, is taking money out of people's pockets to give to other people. Now, that's not the way you create wealth. What you need to do is to have wealth generation policy, because if you don't create the wealth, you haven't got the money to spend on all these things. And at the moment, we have the highest tax burden we've had for 70 years. We've got the biggest debt in our history. People that are wealth creators are moving out of the country because they don't want to pay these punitive taxes. This isn't the way to create prosperity, and Labour is making it worse.
Yeah, and Seema, the government's also whacking up taxes by freezing those thresholds, aren't they? Is it going to wipe out any extra help that people are going to get?
Well, let me just challenge Andrew on some of his analysis. Firstly, to recognise that a large proportion of people who will be benefiting from the lifting of the two-child limit are families who are working, and there will be families working in your own constituency as well. And this is where I think we've got to recognise the collective impact of what has happened over the last 14 years. And it is also the case that we have a much more stable economy. We've had 6 interest rate cuts since August 2024. You'll know, Andrew, the difference that has made for people facing their mortgage bills and then also ending up passing that on to renters. But when you see the collective impact of what the government is now doing, the way in which we've brought stability to our economy, the way in which we're seeing our economy being the second fastest growing in the G7 last year.
Andrew talked specifically about wealth creation. Do you feel that the government is doing that?
I do think that the government is focusing on wealth creation, and you'll see that in the investment we're bringing to support entrepreneurship, in the investment that we've seen from the Mayor of London as well in supporting businesses, and the money going into our high streets, finally reversing so much of the cuts that we saw. Over 60% of my councils, Hounslow Council's funding was cut under the Tories. And when you see that those councils across London had their funding cut to the bone, cuts to services, this is about investing in our high streets.
Andrew, the Conservatives had 14 years to turn this around. And what would Kemi Badenoch, your leader, really be doing right now?
Seema's doing a great job in relaying the government spin on this. The reality is we are a lot poorer under this government, and the fact that you think the Mayor of London's helping, my goodness, have you seen the precept that he imposes on boroughs like Havering, for which we get very little service? So the Mayor of London isn't helping. The Labour government is taking Britain backwards. Now, you say, what would Kemi Badenoch and the Conservative Party do? The reality is that the Conservative Party did make mistakes in government. We did allow taxes to go too high, and we should have abolished the Mayor of London. That would have saved all of our boroughs a lot of money so we could run our own affairs again. So lots of things we should have done but we didn't do. But the reality is we understand, my party understands, that you have to create the wealth. You have to incentivise business, entrepreneurs. You have to get people back to work. We have unemployment rising, and we have people getting poorer under a Labour government.
Look, I have a background in business, and I know all the work we're doing in government as well on supporting entrepreneurship and women's entrepreneurship. But I will also say that your constituents benefit as well as mine from what the Mayor has done on freezing bus fares, freezing
we will talk more about entrepreneurship, I'm sure, over the next few months.
I
just want to move on to the politics of all of this, though, because Keir Starmer has refocused his rhetoric on the cost of living, and part of the context to all of this is the upcoming local elections in May, which will see every council in London up for grabs. So let's take a quick look at this map, and we can see that currently Labour is in control of the vast majority across the city. So, Seema, what do you think about this? How confident are you that Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, is going to hold on to the vast majority of these boroughs?
Well, Labour is currently, in the polls very much in the lead in London. But what I will say is this, that you do see some of the fragmentation of support. I think the Tory support in London is also very much challenged, even compared to 2024. And I think it is the case that Londoners will ask the question that if we want to see a difference in our lives and cost of living, as we've just highlighted, what party is actually going to be making a difference? Which party is acting versus which party is talking about acting, and otherwise basically giving the impression that they will do something different.
Well,
and I think you can't just have protests.
How much of a threat to both of you are the likes of the Green Party, Zach Balansky, reform as well?
In my area, the Green Party, we don't see them at all. We don't see the Liberal Democrats. We are seeing reform. In the past, we've seen quite a lot of Labour. But nobody wants Labour. Labour actually are a party that I can't find hardly anyone wanting to vote for in my borough. I'd be surprised if there was a single Labour councillor left in Havering. We are tired of Labour policies which damage our local towns and communities. We're sick of the Mayor of London, who takes a huge amount of resources out of boroughs like Havering, funnels it into inner London. We barely see a policeman in our area, but we pay this huge precept. So I think reform of London government, actually in my area, is what people want. They don't want to be under the Mayor of London. We want to be unitary authority and control our own affairs again.
Andrew, there was a poll from More in Common this week indicated that if an election were held right now, that you would actually lose your seat to Reform. Obviously, we're a long way off a general election, 4 more years, but we are now just months away from these local council elections.
Well, I've seen polls that show lots of MPs would lose lots of seats to Reform. I think even one showed that Seema's seat might go Reform. So look, I think we're a long way to the general election. What I can say is that what's important is we have the right policies for our country and for London. And I want reform, with a small r, in London. I don't think the current electoral system, the current established way of running London works. I think that outer areas like Havering and even parts of Hounslow, you know, we're not in a London, and what's right for central London is not necessarily right for boroughs like ours. So we do need reform, and I think the Conservative Party should be leading that reform across London.
Seema, do we need reform with a big R, a small R? How much of a challenge
I think we're actually seeing a lot of reform with a small R, and I think we're seeing that with the money that's coming into London councils finally, with the focus that the government is now having on looking at fairer funding, looking at where actually local councils have been bearing the cost. Actually, there are councils that have been the better off councils, and that is partly reversing the way in which funding has been really broken, because the previous Conservative government took away the link between funding and need. And that has been the issue for London and councils more widely. And I think what is significant is that you need reform. You always need reform. The fact that we've now got the Mayor of London investing in support for people over 19 to get access to skills and access to jobs.
London councils are shockingly talking about getting rid of our cherished freedom pass to stop our old folk being able to travel on tubes, buses and trains.
And what is never coming from Andrew is what you
we
will
must
actually
keep the freedom
be doing.
pass. Do you not agree with
We will be talking a lot more about the elections and policies.
Tens of billions that the Tories have talked about
campaign
cutting.
To keep the freedom pass.
Tens of billions that you've talked about cutting.
Can we answer that one?
But never actually.
Do you want to answer that one, Seema?
What I will say is this.
Come on, our pensioners need it.
Of course we need to be supporting it. And you'll know that we've also had £500 increase in pensions. What I will say is this.
We must keep the freedom pass.
That the Tories are never saying what they're for.
Okay.
And that's
we will be talking a lot more about what all the parties are for in the next 5 months. So plenty more to come ahead of those elections. Now, next, though, the campaign to protect owners running cafes in some North London parks. The operators face being turfed out by the City of London Corporation after a decision to re-tender contracts. More than 15,000 people have signed a petition opposing the changes. Among those supporting the existing cafe owners are actors Benedict Cumberbatch and James McAvoy. The City of London Corporation says the cafes will continue to run as community havens with significant investment planned. Our senior reporter Helen Drew has more.
Below freezing temperatures were doing nothing to deter these swimmers from a swift couple of lengths in Parliament Hill Lido. But what they definitely needed after was a hot drink at the cafe overlooking the water. It's been run by Emma Fernandez and her partner Patrick Matthews for 10 years. The week before Christmas, they were told they only have the contract until the end of January.
It was a phone call that told us that we'd lost our cafe, and because it really is our livelihood, and we've got 2 small children, that was just really devastating. I'm not going to lie to you, I really don't have like a plan B for my life, and this is the one thing that I know how to do and that I love doing. So it's I don't know what my future is going to be, really. I really don't know.
Their cafe sits on land owned by the City of London Corporation, which manages green spaces including Hampstead Heath. The corporation put the contracts up for tender and have awarded this one, plus cafes at Queen's Park, Golders Hill Park and Parliament Hill Fields, to an Australian-inspired business called Daisy Green. A 5th in Highgate Wood is yet to be announced. 3 of those cafes are run by Emma and Patrick.
The City of London Corporation said the applications to run the cafes were reviewed with several factors in mind, including the menu, concept and food offer, and community and social value rather than purely income.
They also say the new cafes will deliver high-quality food, welcoming community spaces and significant investment.
Given you have a really privileged spot here, can you see that it is fair to tender?
Yes, of course, and also it's like part of the of the process, that it would regularly be tendered. However, I think that what's not really fair is that we built it up from scratch. Everything that's here we created out of nothing. There wasn't a business there was nothing.
An online petition to ask the corporation to stop the handover has over 15,000 signatures, including from these regulars, many fresh from the Lido.
It means a guaranteed warm-up after a freezing cold swim, and it means community.
Particularly we love this place because of its warmth, not just coming out from the cold, but also the warmth of the environment. The people that are employed here, a lot of them are local people. It's like a family here.
I think the important thing to bear in mind is that the open space cafes are not like normal commercial cafes. They're community hubs. There's a very wide demographic across this area. You know, there's some pockets of real affluence. There's also some pockets of real deprivation.
The new cafe operator, Daisy Green, told us that they are a family-run independent business and that they're not a chain, but a small business set up to serve communities across London. They say prices and menus have been tailored for affordability and that all jobs are safe.
Well, I visited all of these cafes over the years with my kids, and they're all really nice. The City of London Corporation says they could be nicer, and they're trying to balance that, aren't they? The demands of local people and what they see as also opportunities for others. Andrew, I think you've also visited a few of these.
Yeah, I have.
How do they get it right?
They're excellent places, and in fact, the City of London do a fantastic job in managing these open spaces in London, far better than some local councils manage their parks, I have to say. So, you know, the City of London has to decide what's best. Now, clearly, these are community hubs, and I'm very in favour of ensuring that those community hubs continue, but it's also a commercial decision. You know, there has to be tendering for these things. That happens across all walks of life, particularly in the public sector. So that has to happen, but clearly they're doing a great job and they're very popular. So ultimately, if the customers want them to stay, the City of London needs to take into account the views of the people that use those cafeterias.
Yes, Seema, 15,000 people have signed petitions to keep these owners. That's a huge number, isn't it?
It is a huge number, and I think it is a real indication of how important local cafes can be, because people don't just go into them to just buy a coffee. It's a place where people feel part of the community, feel connected, they develop their own cultures. And I think I would agree with Andrew on this point, because it's really important that alongside looking at commercial decision, you do take into account community values, community interests and community voices. And I think that's what we all want to see, that the City of London Corporation is able to perhaps review, to take a pause, to review, to... I think it's with that scale of local opposition, and I think some of local members of Parliament as well, quite concerned about the process that has been followed. I think that is important.
So you'd like to see them re-look at this issue? I mean, it's only a couple of weeks until they're supposed to give up their ownership, these owners.
Well, I do think there should be perhaps a pause and a review of this, because you want to have local cafes that are places people feel like they have connection with and they own, and that's important for community.
I have to say the City of London do a fantastic job in managing these open spaces. I wish they could manage some other parks in London that are neglected, which I also visit. So I think hats off to the City of London, but yes, you're right. If there's public concern about what is being proposed, then they should certainly have a fresh look before a change is made.
Just sort of separately to this, when we look at the affordability of these kind of businesses, tax is a huge issue. The government are making changes to hospitality taxes. Those rates were supposed to be going up, but in some areas it's thought that for pubs at least those rates are not going to be as high as they were going to be, so rowing back on this. Is that the right move, Andrew?
Certainly, I agree with the change of what the Chancellor's announced over pubs. I think, you know, our pubs are part of our heritage, it's part of our culture. They are also very much community hubs, and so many of them are feeling the pinch with the recent budget. So it's good the government's seemingly going to be doing a U-turn on this, but the entire hospitality sector is now feeling under threat. And I do think that, again, having more and more tax burden on small businesses is a disaster. And so we need to get back to not having these burdens. Business rates need complete reform, and also national insurance on small businesses as well. That's had a huge effect on the high street, but also on the hospitality sector.
Well, it is the case that business rates need reform, and that's exactly what we're looking at. I think some of
they're due to go up significantly for lots of hospitality businesses.
But I think, and I know that the government continues to keep a lot of dialogue with businesses about this. But I think the fundamental point I think is important to remember, and this was a point made when we were in opposition too, is that where we haven't seen the changes, where we've seen very large, for example, online warehouses supporting e-commerce that haven't been paying perhaps a fair rate of business rates, and that's actually meant the burden is on the small businesses in our high streets, that we have wanted to see that rebalancing. And it is the case that some of that is actually happening, and we are investing in our high streets. So we always will need to keep things under review, but it's really important that we do see that rebalancing.
All right, thank you. Now, finally, to London's community of Chagos Islanders who are opposing government plans to hand their British-owned homeland over to the government of Mauritius. Evicted by the British government from their island home in the Indian Ocean in the 1960s and 70s, most Chagosians initially moved to Mauritius and the Seychelles. But they do have the right to British citizenship, and over the years, thousands have settled in Sussex and London. This week, as politicians voted on a bill handing the island over to Mauritius, Chagosians gathered to make their voices heard and to demand a say over the future of their homeland, with many hoping to one day return. Johnny Harvey has more.
Outside Parliament, members of the Chagosian community. Their families were forced to leave their homeland in the 1960s and 70s so that the British government could establish a joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia, the largest of the islands. Now they're here protesting a bill that would hand ownership of the islands to Mauritius, ending its status as a British overseas territory.
I've been proud being British since I was born. Everyone will feel the same way as British. It seemed like the Labour government and the customer steam ahead with the treaty without consulting the most important key component of that deal, which is the Chagosians. And this makes us very angry. I'd rather die for my country than my country go to Mauritius. This is the type of angriness we got in me right now, and it's shared with all the Chagosians right now.
We want the self-determination to dedicate what the future of our homeland, what we want to do with our homeland. And we want the Chagosian to be first, and we all matter, we are people. We don't want another state to come and talk on our behalf. We will challenging, we will not surrender. We will challenging until the end.
As part of the deal signed with the Mauritian government in May of last year, the UK would lease back the military base from Mauritius for 99 years at a cost of £101 million a year.
The government told us that they will never compromise on national security and that they remain certain that this treaty is the best way to protect the base on Diego Garcia. They say the treaty is firmly in the UK national interest and has been publicly welcomed by the US, Australia and other key allies.
But these Chagosians criticise their lack of involvement in the process. They do not want to be part of Mauritius, want to remain British and one day return to their homeland.
Andrew, you're nodding away there. You've been campaigning alongside the Chagosian community for many years. Why?
Because they're British and they have the right of self-determination like we do. It's absolutely outrageous. We have former colonies. Every single one of them had the right of self-determination, decolonisation. We are denying these good people the right to decide their own destiny. We fought a war over the Falkland Islands to give the Falkland Islanders the right to be British. We stand by Gibraltar in the same way. This goes against every human right imaginable. Not only did we take them away from their homeland, we depopulated those islands, forced them away from their ancestral homes. Now we're saying we're going to give away their country to a foreign land for which they don't want to be part of and have never been part of. And it's going to cost us, those figures are wrong by the way, up to 35 billion over 99 years. That's what it's going to cost the British taxpayers. So it's costing us huge sums of money, it's denying the right of self-determination, and it's giving away a vital security base which we currently own.
Seema, why are they being denied the right of self-determination?
Well, look, firstly, I think just to clarify what Andrew has just said, the Diego Garcia military base, it is vital for our defence, and it is true to say that the agreement that's been reached, which most rounds of negotiation were actually under the previous government, is about securing our futures, and also that is a matter that's very important for the British people too, and it is supported by our allies. And what we are doing, I think this is very important, and I recognise the importance of this, is to continue to work with the Chagosian community. I know
but you
my
could see that people campaigning outside Parliament.
And I think in relation to this...
Why are they denied what other former colonies have been given?
And I think in relation to this, I think, Andrew, you'll know as well that some of the agreements around being able to settle on other islands as well, that's in discussions with the Mauritian government, is extremely important. And it's where I know my colleague, Minister Doughty, continues to meet the Chagosian contact group as well, because there are different views as well within the Chagosian community. But it is very, very important
that we
keep
decide.
the dialogue.
So in the Falkland Islands, they had a referendum.
Yeah.
They voted 99.9% to stay British.
Wouldn't that
Same
be
with
a fairer
Gibraltar.
way, Seema?
Let the Chagosians have their say. They are British, and we've got a duty to give them the right of self-determination.
Well, look, I think the reasons why we need to move forward as we are, I think, have been shared in Parliament, including in the debate with the amendment that was debated this week in the Lords. And I think it comes down to this, about making sure that we can secure the Diego Garcia base for our security for that 99 years, and then to be reviewed after that.
But
does also make sure there is a fair settlement.
Why are we giving it away? You say secure the base, Seema, but we currently own it.
You'll be aware of the legal challenges that came to it.
I think you'll be
and the previous government, James Cleverly in the previous government as well. I think
let's see answer.
But self-determination.
It's important to see the world as it is, not as the way the world as you want it to be, Andrew, in this. And I think it is important to keep that dialogue. We must have that support with the Chagosian people, and that's why that dialogue that continues with the government is very important.
Seema says there is a mixture of views. Let me ask you specifically about the people who have come here in recent months, the Chagosians, because we've covered this story because the council, Hillingdon Council, which is supporting them when they arrive, have said to us this week that they're not getting enough support and that they're only getting enough support to cover the cost of 10 days once they arrive. Is the government failing the Hillingdon Council and the Chagosians?
Well, look, I think on the detail of the discussions between Hillingdon Council and the government, I will say this: the council has received funding for some of those immediate costs, and there is ongoing discussion. I know there's ongoing discussion between
there needs
the
to be
Home
more
Office
done
and MHCLG about how that funding is supported. But I will say this as well, and I think it's important in terms of the communications around supporting Chagosians coming to the UK, that they are expected to also find accommodation and to be able to support themselves as well on coming. And I think that's important in how we support people coming before they arrive.
We must leave it there. Thank you. That is all we have time for this week. Thank you to both of our guests. We will be back same time next week. And remember, if there is a story that you think we should be covering, do drop us an email to hello@bbclondon@bbc.co.uk with the subject line Politics London. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great rest of your day.